I am so glad you convinced me that the family car should be the Defender 110. It is so beautiful inside. It's so comfortable, and it just feels indestructible.
Yes, it really is. I've been waiting a long time for the new model to come out. The Defender 110, I'm telling you, it's my favorite car of all times. It's my third one. You know, I have stories of going off-road. The guy managed the group. He was like, what are you doing in this beautiful car? I'm like, I'm going off-road. He's like, are you sure? Because you can use one of ours. And then they look like Mad Max cars. I'm like, no, we're going to do this. And he was shocked.
Wow. Well, it's great because the Defender has been reimagined for 21st century adventure, and its unparalleled off-road ability, as well as its robust interior, are invaluable whether you're headed towards uncharted territory or just a weekend of exploration. The Defender 110 tackles challenging surroundings with absolute confidence. The SUV conveys strength outside and in, featuring peerless technology like an intuitive driver display and an award-winning infotainment system. That's my favorite part, to keep you connected no matter where the journey takes you. Adventure is unique to everyone, and so is the Defender. Choose from the two-door Defender 90, the four-door Defender 110, or the larger Defender 130 with the ability to seat up to 8 passengers. You'll find uncompromising performance in all three. So pack up and go even further with the Defender 110. Learn more at LandRoverUSA.com/Defender.
Sometimes it takes a different approach to help you unlock your true potential. Capella University's game-changing FlexPath format helps you learn at your own pace and fit earning a degree into your life. From before you enroll to after you graduate, you'll be supported by people who are invested in your success so you can pursue your goals knowing that help is available if you need it. Imagine your future differently at capella.edu.
This isn't your average business podcast, and he's not your average host. This is the James Altucher Show on the Choose Yourself Network. Today on the James Altucher Show.
You were the Cookie Monster. Mm-hmm. You were Grover. Mm-hmm. You were Miss Piggy. Mm-hmm. You were a bunch of characters on the Muppets. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, you were Yoda on Star Wars. Mm-hmm. And each character had so many relatable characteristics for me as a child watching this. The Bert and Ernie relationship or the Cookie Monster. These characters, they could be beyond human. They could be really kind of these platonic ideals of certain personality traits. And I think that's what happened in many cases.
Well, there's a certain aspect of the society that is not accepting of people that aren't considered, in quotation marks, normal. And none of the Muppets are normal. None of them are straight down the middle. They all have their own flaws, their own insecurities, their own weirdnesses. And I think people respond to that.
I asked you before the podcast if it was okay if I had asked you to do a voice.
And I said it was fine to ask me.
So I'll ask you, can you do a voice?
No.
Frank Oz, I grew up on you. Like, I grew up on listening to your voice. My parents, from the age of 2 or 3 on, would put me in front of Sesame Street, or they would put me in front of the Muppets. And then, of course, Star Wars. I was an obsessed fanatic. Maybe if people don't know who Frank Oz is, I'll just give a little intro. And you've been on so many different things, I can't give all your credits. But you were... I had no idea about this. You were Ernie on Sesame Street.
Nope, I was Bert.
Oh, you were Bert.
Jim was Ernie.
Yeah, Jim Henson was Ernie.
Yeah.
You were the Cookie Monster. Mm-hmm. You were Grover. Mm-hmm. Then on the Muppets, you were Miss Piggy. Mm-hmm. You were a bunch of characters on the Muppets. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, you were Yoda on Star Wars. Mm-hmm. And, and then, we're here. I just want to make sure I get the title right. You have just put out an amazing documentary, Muppet Guys Talking, Secrets Behind the Show, the whole world watched. And we'll talk about why it was so amazing, the whole creative process behind the Muppets and everything you did. But one thing first, I asked you before the podcast if it was okay if I had asked you to do a voice.
And I said it was fine to ask me.
So I'll ask you, can you do a voice?
No. No, like I said before, the reason is, it's just too show-offy. It's just too easy. The characters that I have are very pure. And if I did a voice for them, they wouldn't be pure anymore. They'd be just a party favor, just a trick, just a show off, and they mean too much to me just to throw them off like that.
Well, it's interesting because in the movie, in the documentary Muppet Guys Talking, people always say, you were saying, or someone was saying in the movie that people always ask you, what voices did you do? But that wasn't it. People didn't recognize the pure performance aspects of these characters.
Yeah, for all of us, people, it's the strangest thing. As on Muppet Guys Talking, you said, we talked about that. People, for some reason, think we only do the voices, and the voices are only 5% of it. We do the entire character. And that's the hardest part, the physical part, picking up your cues, making sure you're not blocking somebody, making sure you're not blocking the light, making sure you pick up the prop right, making sure you do the dialogue properly. That's all the stuff we do. And the voices are just there. They just are. And with Yoda, it takes 4 people to do Yoda, and the voice I do a year later.
What do you mean it takes 4 people to do Yoda?
I mean, it takes 4 people. It takes me and 3 other people to perform him, make him come alive.
I don't understand. Who are the other 3?
Each one has their own thing they're doing. One is doing the eyes, one is doing the eyelids, one is doing the ears, one is doing the hand, one is, and I'm doing the rest of it. It's so interesting that people are surprised about that. If I asked you before I told you, I'm just curious, if I asked you before I told you about how Yoda was done, what would you have said? How would you have thought Yoda was worked?
You know what? I'm going to give you my honest answer, and it's incredibly stupid. It's the most stupid response you've ever heard to this. Until I started researching, and I watched the documentary, and then once I saw the documentary, what I didn't mention in the intro is you've been on a ton of movies. I recognize you from the movies you've been on, like Trading Places, and so on. There's a whole bunch of movies you've been involved in, but. Can I tell you the stupidest answer? You promise you won't think I'm an idiot? Well, you can think I'm an idiot. I don't care.
Who should I not tell? Your fiance. I better not tell your fiance.
Well, she already knows I'm an idiot. I thought the Frank Oz who played Yoda was about 3 or 4 feet tall and was put inside a Yoda costume, and that's who you were.
Isn't that something?
Yeah.
People think that. People think a dozen other things. It's something. It really is. And what it is, it's a compliment because you don't think it's being worked by 4 people.
You think that Yoda is
one
this
thing.
Real being.
Yeah, and
Miss Piggy is this real being.
Well, if somebody tells me, hey, you're doing a great job with working Yoda or Piggy, then I've lost. What I have to do is not have people see it's a great job, but having what I do transcendent. So they don't even talk about the job. They just believe in the character.
Yeah, and I think that is so true. Well, and I think what this podcast is going to be is all about the process of creativity, that you guys were a machine. Jim Henson.
Not really a machine. Machines go smoothly with oil. We break down a lot.
well, that's interesting too. I think, again, the process of creativity I really want to explore here because, the Muppets were everywhere. And then, of course, the idea of Muppetry, if you will, even infiltrated, something as iconic as Star Wars as I was growing up. Went from Sesame Street to Star Wars. Yeah. So
yeah, well, I'm glad you're talking about that because, as you know, when you saw it, Muppet Guys Talking is documentary is talking about how we create the characters. It is giving how Gonzo was created by Dave Goelz, how I did Piggy, and how somebody else did another character. So. That's kind of the joy of doing that. Besides, the reason we did this documentary really is to show some of the people in there nobody knows, but they're known around the world, but nobody knows them. The characters are known around the world. That's one thing. I want to give them their due. And the other thing is that my wife, Victoria, who's also the producer, she saw us clowning around and having fun, and while we were working, and she realized she'd never seen a work atmosphere like that before, where people can have fun and love each other and try and screw each other over and work like hell and no politics. She's never seen that. So she wanted that to be seen in Muppet Guys Talking.
And it really is. And you guys are just laughing and having fun talking about all these prior experiences and how you develop these characters. And I, for one, I didn't realize how much I guess you could call it improv was involved in the Muppets. Like you described as you were playing Miss Piggy, one time doing a karate chop on, I guess, Kermit, played by, who was, done by Jim Henson. And I didn't know that was something that was just improv. And that helps create Miss Piggy's entire personality for years to come.
That was in rehearsal, but all improv also, and we're all improv on set. I mean, I haven't performed for about 8 or 9 years now because I've been directing movies. But when I am performing, even when I'm directing movies, I'll get the take, but I'll ask the actors, whether it's Kevin Kline or if it's Edward Norton or whoever I direct with, I ask them to just, if you're not liking the lines, just go ahead and do something else. Because what is written on the page does not necessarily live on the floor,
Yeah.
So it works in my movies as a director, and it certainly worked in the Muppets because the idea is to bring them alive, not just to say lines.
And there's so many things, so many directions I want to go with this, and where I want to end up is how the process of creativity that you guys worked with, that your wife so clearly saw. I want to see how that could be applied to other industries, other areas of life, creativity in general.
I'm so glad you're getting into this because that's what she I would love her to be here now. She's doing a seminar for about 9 people who flew from Australia and England and everything. She teaches a lot of stuff, but she's the one who really saw the value because she had worked with companies, and she saw the value, and she asked me to do this, and I said no. I don't want to do this. And for a year, she bugged me. And finally, I said yes. And I'm so grateful to her that she thought of this because we have a history here that no matter what happens to us, the spirit of how we work with Jim is alive always. So I'm grateful to her for that.
Well, okay, so let's start with that. You mentioned the spirit of how you work with Jim. I feel, for wrong or correctly or incorrectly, creativity, productivity, efficiency, and just pure joy and happiness at work or in any organization always comes from the top down. What was special about Jim Henson? Obviously, it was incredibly special.
Yeah.
It's special about him, not even as a creative, but as a leader.
I'm in an odd place because I want so much to answer you fully. But if I do, then the people won't need to see documentary.
No, that's not true.
I want to answer those aspects very truthfully, but not necessarily everything that's in the documentary. Because I really want them to go to MuppetGuysTalking.com, and this is an outright plug. And it's not, by the way, it's not about the money. I don't care about the money. If I lose all the money, I don't care. It's about people seeing how people can be working together inclusively with all different kinds of people, and people still get along and work for one main goal, which is the quality of the project. So, that is really what we wanted to show in this documentary. So in any case, I'll go answer your question. Well, Jim was, how do I describe Jim? All I know is I was with him for 35 years, traveling everywhere. And at that time, you knew how brilliant he was, but I didn't know really what a singular human being he was because I was with him all the time.
I didn't know. I don't know how brilliant he was. I mean, people say it, but tell me an example of brilliance.
Everything he did was out of excitement. It wasn't, hey, if we do this, we can make money. Hey, if we do this, we should aim toward this audience. Never thought of any of that stuff. He just did what he felt was exciting. Okay, not many bosses do that. And not many bosses treat you like a partner and not a boss. And not many bosses are so collaborative. He was the one who made the final decision, but he valued everybody's contribution, everybody. Not that he would necessarily do it because he may not agree with it, but he absolutely listened to everybody and it wasn't lip service. He also was very soft-spoken, never raised his voice, never told us what to do, never told us how to do something. He just led by example.
And it also seems like he was very playful. So whenever, and I'm just guessing, but I imagine at moments of downtime or when you weren't in the middle of creating a scene, I imagine he had, his mind was always at work thinking, how can we be playful and be creative?
Well, not only that, I think his mind was work on other projects that he was excited about doing. You know, he would have, he was going from movie to television show to script development to everything. And he would fly from LA to London to New York, because that's where the offices all were at the end. And he was just excited about everything. And thank God he had a lot of people who he valued who could do it with him, you know. But he worked in a very focused way, like you're talking about. Yeah, he got excited when we're actually doing something and playful. But there was also other stuff going on inside him about larger things he was excited about, you know. He's very layered.
Now, did you ever, like, obviously he built a big business too. Did you ever kind of see him in business mode?
Oh, sure. He was very smart in business mode, very smart. There's something in the documentary that Dave Goelz says that his wife, Debbie, used to be the financial officer of Muppets years ago. And he said that Debbie told him that Jim would see a spreadsheet and Jim would zero in right on the one thing that was important, you know. And she'd work with a lot of execs, and she'd never seen anybody do that. So he had so many talents.
So let's reel back to the very beginning. Your parents were puppeteers.
It was their hobby. In Antwerp, they actually did some shows. That's where I grew up. But we came to the States, and they never did any shows. It was really more a social group for them. Yeah, and then I started puppets when I was about 10 years old, and when I was 18, I stopped. I want to be a journalist, you know. And so Jim asked me to come out to New York at that time, and I just haven't left.
Why did he ask you? How did he know you?
He saw me doing a show when I was 17 years old, and then when he moved from Washington, D.C. to New York City, he needed a performer because he had two other people working for him, Jerry Jewell and Don Saline, and he needed a fourth performer. And he remembered me and asked me to come out at 19 years old to work part-time for 6 months. And my parents said they were very courageous. I have kids, and I wouldn't let my 19-year-old go alone to New York. But of course, I would have no say in it. But I went, and I did my best to go to CCNY. I lived in the Village. Took the subway up to CCNY all the time to continue studies, and I just couldn't do it because I was having too much fun and learning too much about the business with Jim, because we were doing many, many commercials, and it was a great training ground for me.
Is that how it all got started, was with commercials?
Well, actually, it didn't. It started with Jim and Jane Henson doing a show in Washington, D.C. called Sam and Friends. And Sam and Friends, I think, was 5 minutes a night. And it was there.
1956?
Yeah, 56. And actually, it would never happen today, but it was put on 5 minutes before the 11 o'clock news to bring people to see the newscast. So it was always intended as an adult show at 11 or 10:55 p.m., I think it was. And so they did that and got an Emmy, worked for about 8 years there, and then they moved to New York City. And during that time, while in Washington, D.C., he made a lot of commercials, and then continued when he came to New York City, because that was all before Sesame Street.
And when did Sesame Street start for you guys?
I think around 1969. I think so.
And Sesame Street, of course, is just a phenomenon like that. I mean, people always. I remember one time about 5 years ago, I was in a dinner, and I don't know, some president was threatening to, or somebody was threatening to cut off funding for PBS. And there was a woman from PBS at this dinner, and she was like, PBS is profitable. We don't need funding. We've got Sesame Street. So you know, and basically Jim Henson made Sesame Street in the sense that those are all characters that you guys did.
Yeah. John Stone, who's passed, he was really the father of Sesame Street. He asked Jim to join. He was the really key person. I think without the Muppets, it would not have been as strong. Yeah.
Yeah, and so and again, each character had so many relatable characteristics. You know, for me as a child watching this, the Bert and Ernie relationship, or the Cookie Monster, or whatever.
What's interesting is we didn't have characters with relationships before that. We didn't have known characters before that. We did hundreds of commercials, and we did every variety show and talk show you could name. So we were there for 3 minutes at a time or 4 minutes at a time with special acts from from Jimmy Dean Show to Ed Sullivan Show to Hollywood Palace to Perry Como, all these names that nobody knows now. And then we did Sesame Street. That's the first time we actually were doing full-fledged characters. And it took a long time. It took me about a year to get Bert, but took a long time to really do that because we'd never done that before.
And is that because you suddenly had to get used to doing a consistent personality with one of these characters?
Yeah, I think the writing was, it's always the writing. And the writing called for bits with characters. And so they kept on repeating those bits and repeating the characters. And the ones that worked stayed, like Bert and Ernie, for instance.
Yeah. So many of the characters, the Count.
Oh, the Count, and there's Perry Dawn, and there's so many, I can't even think.
Snuffleupagus. Big Bert. Who was in Big Bert?
Carol Spinney.
Okay.
Yeah, and Oscar he did. Huh. Yeah.
And but Jim Henson would often play in, not only do his own characters like Kermit the Frog, but he would wear the costumes on the bigger characters.
He wouldn't. No. He only. Yeah. He. This is where you got this from. Is great with the Muppet Guys Talking in the documentary. That's one thing people don't know. Jim was in a particular. I'm not going to say which costume because it's a real surprise. Jim was in a full costume on the Muppet Show, and nobody ever knew it until I said it. And it's a real surprise. After that, we convinced him that he was Jim Henson. He shouldn't be in those costumes. He didn't care, of course.
Why? Why would you say he shouldn't be in a costume?
Because he was, it's funny. The more, unfortunately, in my opinion, the more one does, the less people think of you. I mean, if you're a scientist, then you're brilliant. But if you're a scientist and you're a tap dancer, all of a sudden it goes downhill.
What about the concept of a Renaissance man, though?
That's a good point. But I don't sense that appreciation here. That's what I feel anyway. So
I mean, Jim Henson was a storyteller, right? He was a director.
And by the way, he didn't care. This is my opinion, But my opinion is that, unfortunately, I have a show downtown that I directed called In and of Itself, which you got to see, okay? You haven't heard of it?
I haven't heard of it.
Oh, you got to see it. It's off Broadway in Union Square.
Oh, that's great.
And it's about identity. It'll totally blow your mind.
I will definitely see it. How it's still running? It's down there?
It's been running for a year. We just had our 400th performance last night and celebrated.
And is it puppets?
Nope.
Real people?
Yep, not one person. And I can't even describe it to you. It's not that I won't. I'm not able to.
Okay, I'm going to definitely see it. I'll see it within this next week.
Yeah.
When does it play? What days?
It's till August.
Okay.
It plays, and the director, so I get you tickets.
Okay, excellent.
But it's very unusual, and it's extraordinary that it's full house every night after a year.
So
anyway, I wasn't meaning to plug that, but
that's okay. Plug whatever you want.
But I think I did I start that to talk about how various people can do different things. Maybe I lost the train,
you said if Jim Henson were to do too many things, somehow that sullies the reputation a little.
Well, let me ask you something. If you have I just gave you an example. If you have a brilliant scientist, Jonas Salk, who helped. Is it Salk?
Yeah, polio.
Yeah, polio. And he was also a tap dancer, and he also was a ventriloquist. Now, would you think the same of him?
I might think more, because look at Richard Feynman. Richard Feynman was a physicist and a juggler.
He was brilliant, and he was somebody who loved playing.
Yeah,
that's where, like Einstein loved playing, and Jim loved playing. That's where the genius comes from, as playing.
Yeah, because when you combine the artistry of two different fields, that's where there's a huge vein of creativity.
So maybe in your experience, you've seen it as you react to it as a Renaissance person. I see it, and I see a woman or a man who I can't label, so I'm confused.
It's really interesting.
And wait a second, you can't be this and that and that, and it lowers one's in my opinion, it lowers one's view of what one is mainly known for, in my opinion.
That's interesting because
That's what I've experienced.
I could see that because I think people want to put everybody, and for better or for worse, this is not a criticism of people, but I think people want to put people in their box that they're known for. And when people shift from that, there's almost an anger that develops from their audience.
Well, it makes us feel uncomfortable if we don't know who you are. And if you're more than one thing, it makes us feel very uncomfortable.
But look at you. You were an actor. Okay, you've been
Not
in
really
like
an actor.
But you've been in like a dozen movies.
Yeah, but that's not called acting. That's I was just in there a day.
You're a character actor.
No, I was in there a day because John Landis asked me, and I've always felt it was important for a director to get in front of the camera to know how frightening it is for an actor. It's very important.
Okay, but you're a director?
Yeah, I've directed about a dozen feature films. Yeah, and actually now I can say I've directed 13 films because of this documentary. Yeah.
And you're Miss Piggy.
Yeah, I know. It's odd, but some people have a problem with seeing me in all those things, and I'll be whoever I am, but that's what I've experienced.
For me, it's again, I'll say it and I won't say it again, but it's just phenomenal to be sitting in front of, I'll always get them confused, but Bert, Miss Piggy, and Yoda all at the same time. I grew up on you.
I know.
So
I know it's really something that I don't like social media. I never liked it. I hated Facebook. It took me 3 months to get off. They get your claws in you, can't get out.
Yeah.
But this time for the documentary, I was urged to go on Twitter and Facebook. I said, okay, I'll go on Facebook. I haven't even checked it. But I went on Twitter, and I'm a personal guy. I don't do many interviews except for right now because of the documentary. I'll go back in my cave again very soon. But because of the documentary, and I believe in it so much, and I want people to see it, I'm on Twitter, and I really enjoy it. I mean, I've been asked to write a book, and I won't do it, but I can say what I want on Twitter. And the extraordinary thing, getting back to what you said, was I never realized how much people were touched by the characters, because what I see from Twitter is amazing. How much they mean to those people.
We're and I can't speak for everyone. I'm 50 years old, so at these very kind of I don't know what you call them, moments where my life and childhood were being transformed, these characters became very real to me. They were my friends, and because they were not, humans in the standard sense, they're ones that it's like this sort of private relationship almost.
And safer too. We took Muppet Guys Talking to South by Southwest Film Festival, and this happens. It's extraordinary. I mean, after we left, we had a really nice Q&A afterwards with Robert Rodriguez, who's a friend of mine. He was wonderful to ask questions, and we left, and there's a woman who came up to me, and this happens to other performers also in Muppets, just crying and putting out a picture to autograph, but she couldn't even talk. And then we walk outside, and this other lady comes to me and says, and crying and saying, Fozzie's my hero because he never gives up, and I'm dyslexic, and I didn't give up. I was valedictorian. And I mean, it's extraordinary.
That's these things about these characters, is that they could be beyond human. They could be really kind of these platonic ideals of certain personality traits. And I think that's what happened in many cases.
Well, there's also, in this country, certainly now, but always, there's a certain aspect of the society that is not accepting of people that aren't considered, in quotation marks, normal. And none of the Muppets are normal. None of them are straight down the middle. They all have their own flaws, their own insecurities, their own weirdnesses. And I think people respond to that we are part of that also. We are part of them also. And again, I saw something on Twitter, again, where somebody said, I was an abused child, and watching the Muppet Show is the only place I felt safe. I mean, it's extraordinary. I mean, I had no idea, So that was a surprise even though I got on there to really publicize Muppet Guys Talking, I've now, really gotten in there and really enjoy talking to people.
And so again, getting to the essence of creativity, I think, you had this environment where from the top down, the leader was so playful and smart and enjoyable to work with and open to ideas from his team. He also seemed to pick a quality team, like people.
That's the key thing. He picked the people. I mean, the people in MuppetGuysTalking.com. I'm sorry, Muppet Guys Talking. MuppetGuysTalking.com. I'll just do a plug here. That's the only place you can get it. You can't get it at Netflix. You can't get it at HBO, Amazon, because we didn't want a company in the way. We wanted to have a personal relationship. So we have our own site, MuppetGuysTalking.com. You go there and you can buy it for $498. No, only kidding. $10. $10.
I was going to say
it's only $10, it's such a important thing for us to have this. Okay. Any case, you were just saying something. I got off.
Well, just about the creativity, and also there's another thing I noticed is that Jim Henson showed you. So, you. Before I talk about that, I'll let you finish what you were saying. The team, the quality of the team.
Oh yeah, I'm sorry. Yeah, Jim picked all of us. If you look at Muppet Guys Talking, there's 4 of us there. And the newest member of the group is Bill Beretta, who's brilliant. And he's been with us only 26 years. So, we've done so many hundreds of shows. And we still have Jim's spirit because Jim picked us because he saw something in all of us that somehow reverberated inside him that he felt we were not fully grown. None of us were the same as we are now. I mean, I was more of an uptight guy. It was Jim who changed all of us by just leading by example, by being the human being he was. So, but picking everybody is a key thing here. Absolutely.
And then, I felt there was another thing you guys expressed, and I don't feel like I'm giving away the movie. There was so much in there about creativity, but it always seemed like he was really good at showing how to overcommit to the role. So, for instance, when you described the first scene in the Muppet movie, how, where Kermit the Frog's singing his song, how Jim was underwater for like 10 hours in a tank to pull off that scene.
Yeah, probably not 10 hours. He was underwater about 4 hours in that scene. Then he had lunch and then probably went back in for another 4 hours. Yeah.
Okay, so he took a break.
Yeah. As you know in the documentary, there's some terrific drawings which really show how it was.
Yeah.
But the amazing thing with Jim was, as he said, if it was easy, everybody could do it.
Right. It's the overcommitting. If you had a competitor who was a competitor up to that point, and then they weren't willing to overcommit to get the role done right, they were no longer a competitor.
I mean, I don't quite see it as overcommitting because overcommitting seems like the mistake. It's just flat out committing.
Yeah. Okay.
Just flat out committing, as I see it. And there were no limitations. The writers are always told to write whatever they wanted and don't think of their puppets. Just write whatever you want.
Right.
I mean,
so when they wrote you guys running up the wall with the dogs chasing, and then you guys had to figure it out.
Jim had to do it. And also, what's not in the documentary I can talk about, because there's so much not in the documentary. And actually, there's a lot of it in this extra footage we have. But in the Muppet Caper that Jim directed in London, there was people don't know this name, but Esther Williams was a very famous movie star who always had these aquacades in the movies. So an aquacade for Piggy was written. Now, how do you do that with a puppet? But he just made it happen. So at EMI Studios in the dead of winter, there was a large swimming pool, and I was underwater with Piggy for about a week, and I'd be working underwater with a underwater monitor, underwater speakers. I had bricks with loops on them. I put my feet under so I wouldn't float to the top. There'd be a scuba guy next to me with an air hose. I breathe in the air hose. When I hear, okay, ready, I spit out the air hose. I'd do the take, and the guy would bring the stuff back to me. That's the stuff that Jim did. Nothing is impossible.
Nothing is impossible. And then I feel from Sesame Street, obviously, the powers that be saw how popular this. Well, just let me take a step back. What do you think separates Muppets from puppets?
Well, it's weird because Muppets has become like Kleenex. You know, you don't call Kleenex tissues; you call them Kleenex, and all tissues are Kleenex now. Well, all puppets are Muppets now, which is not the case. You know, before Jim, puppets were pretty much standard. It was all these. Each had their own particular personality. There was the roller skating bear. There was the breakaway skeleton. There was the opera singer, the funny opera singer. There was the king and the queen and the dragon. You know, that was pretty much what puppetry was, except for certain people, certainly in European countries. Hugo and Inez, for instance, do brilliant work that is not like that. But mostly, that's what it was. And Jim just, because he didn't know puppets at all, because when he was in his late teens, he wanted to learn television. He didn't care about puppets. He wanted to learn television. And there was an audition at the station for that 5-minute show, and he got the job. He didn't know anything about puppets. So what he did is he started making things that felt right to him. And for the first time, these characters were soft. And for the first time, these characters, you could take eyes off and switch them and put different noses on. For the first time, there's no proscenium like Bert Tillstrom with Kukla, Fran, and Ollie. He took away the proscenium and he made the television set the proscenium. And for the first time,
What do you mean proscenium?
well, you know, when you see a proscenium on stage or a puppet show, you know,
No, is that the?
that's essentially it's if you have a box.
Okay.
And the puppets kind of work in the box.
I see.
Or on stage, the actors work on that stage, you know? Well, that's usually what the TV shot. They shot the puppets and the stage. But Jim took away the stage. And so the stage actually was the television screen.
You know what I love about fantasy sports is that even though I'm not going to be a great basketball player or a baseball player or a football player or whatever, I feel like I get to participate and make decisions and use my knowledge of these different leagues or these different sports to compete. So it's like I can pick my team or I can pick my favorite players and I could use my knowledge to make predictions and maybe even make money. So with the basketball season here, you can now pick combo projections across football and basketball from the Specials League on Prize Picks. This is a league created specifically for combo projections that include two or more players from different sports or leagues. Want to play alongside some of Prize Picks' favorite players like rapper Meek Mill and comedian Andrew Schultz, who's also been a guest on this podcast, and I've been a guest on his? You can now find community plays under the promos tab of the app to view entries for some of the biggest names in the Prize Picks community each week. Look, Prize Picks even offers a reboot policy so that your entries stay in play even if one of your players gets injured. For football and basketball games, if you have a player who exits the game in the first half and does not return in the second, that player is rebooted. Prize Picks is the only daily fantasy sports platform with an injury insurance policy. What? So, I love playing it. I love anywhere where I can use analytical ability with my interests to demonstrate some skill and maybe make some money. And I like the game-like aspect. I do wish they had chess as a category on prizepicks.com, but I'll settle for what they've got. Maybe I should make my own fantasy chess league. But in any case, I love Prize Picks. Go to prizepicks.com/James. Use code James for a first deposit match up to $100. That's the easiest $100 you're ever going to make. So that's prizepicks.com/James and use code James. Daily fantasy sports made easy. The future of learning is definitely online. Like, it's such BS that you have to spend $200,000 or take $200,000 in loans and go to some fancy school when it's useless. It doesn't guarantee you a job. Most employers, including me,
do not care about degrees or grades or anything like that. We want to care that you love what you're doing, that you know what you're doing, in some cases that you have experience or that you're willing to learn. But people in general love learning and are curious. Like the key to success is curiosity. And I think masterclass.com is the perfect model for online learning. I'm really happy they're sponsoring this episode. If you're going to give a gift, give the gift of learning. Masterclass makes a meaningful gift this season for you and anyone on your list, because both of you can learn from the best to become your best, from leadership to effective communication to cooking. Let me tell you some of the classes I've taken. I've taken comedy from Steve Martin. I mean, can you believe I can take a class from Steve Martin on comedy, or Judd Apatow, my favorite comedy director? I could take an actual class from him on writing. Wolfgang Puck on cooking. Dan Brown on writing, or Judy Bloom, who's been on this podcast, on writing. By the way, Wolfgang Puck also has been on this podcast. It's such a pleasure. I try to take classes all the time from masterclass.com. And whether you're watching Masterclass on TV or listening in audio mode in the app or on their site, the quality speaks for itself. It's like these Masterclass instructors are your own personal mentors that are going to help you reach the next level. How much would it cost to take one-on-one classes on comedy from Steve Martin or on chess from Gary Kasparov? You just wouldn't be able to do it. But it would cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. With a Masterclass annual membership, it's $10 a month. Memberships start at $120 a year for unlimited access to one-on-one classes with all 180 plus Masterclass instructors. So it's not just $120 for one instructor. You get all 180 plus Masterclass instructors. Boost your confidence and find practical takeaways you can apply to your life and at work. And if you own a business or are a team leader, use Masterclass to empower and create future-ready employees and leaders. That's the real education in today's world. So this holiday season, you can give one annual membership and get one free at masterclass.com/JAS. JAS, of course, stands for the James Altucher Show. So right now you can get 2 memberships for the price of one at masterclass.com/JAS. Masterclass.com/JAS. Offer terms apply.
AI might be the most important new computer technology ever. It's storming every industry, and literally billions of dollars are being invested. So buckle up. The problem is that AI needs a lot of speed and processing power, so how do you compete without costs spiraling out of control? It's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI. OCI is a single platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs. OCI has 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds, offers one consistent price instead of variable regional pricing, and of course, nobody does data better than Oracle. So now you can train your AI models at twice the speed and less than half the cost of other clouds. If you want to do more and spend less, like Uber, 8x8, and Databricks Mosaic, take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/advance. That's oracle.com/advance. Oracle.com/advance.
So it's interesting. So it seems like a kind of technique here is that you know the basics of an idea, but then it's almost like starting from basic principles of storytelling or whatever, rebuild in your own view what that concept is.
Yeah, I've written this. I've said this many times, but I live by it now. Orson Welles, Jim and I had dinner with Orson Welles when he was doing our show, and
you being inspired by Touch of Evil.
Oh, I was indeed. Absolutely. Brilliant film. And Orson's one of my favorite directors. He is a favorite director. He's such an iconoclast, or was such an iconoclast. He was amazing. But, he said many things in that dinner. The one thing that relates to what you're talking about with Jim and what I live by is he said, most people create out of experience. He said, I create out of innocence. And that's powerful. And so Jim created out of innocence. He had no experience in this. And so out of innocence came originality. And that's what happened. And also, nobody had ever done a close-up on the puppet all the time. And so that close-up demanded lip sync properly. And Jim did that. So Jim really kind of exploded puppetry completely without even knowing it, because he didn't know a thing about it.
What's another example of like creating out of innocence?
well, I'm going to be self-serving, but the off-Broadway show we did here with Derek Delgadio, who's who's doing 8 shows a night, we created that out of innocence. We didn't have a game plan. We just let the honest impulse carry us to the next honest impulse. That's how I work.
I guess I haven't seen the show, so I don't know.
You'll see it.
Okay. Do you feel like...
You'll want me back just saying, Frank, what the hell was that?
All right, I look forward to that. I feel like Yoda, to some extent, was created out of innocence, because I don't think George Lucas had a solid conception of what Yoda was when he first conceived of him.
I don't know, because I don't know if it's Larry. It's Larry and George who wrote that, and I don't know if it's Larry mostly or George mostly. And but I think anybody who sees Yoda can say that he's certainly related to Sensei in Zen, obviously, and so I imagine that's where they got it from. So it's not completely innocent, but purity and innocence in this world is rare, and that's, I think, why the Muppets have they're very true and pure and honest and innocent. And this movie that we did, documentary, as you can tell, we're just sitting talking. Nothing's planned. We just are ourselves and authentic. And I think in this world, especially now, I think people really are thirsty and hungry for authenticity.
How do you think like people who are creative listening to this, they grow up like...
Can I say something?
Mm-hmm.
Let's talk about that for a second. People who are creative. Now, that's limiting to a human being. Who is not creative? I mean, a teacher's creative. A plumber's creative. He has a problem. He's got to fix it out. He doesn't know how to fix it. He's got a toolbox of knowledge. He has to create something to fix it that has not been done before. Lawyers, I think it's maligning anybody by saying only there's certain people only creative. I think everybody's creative to some degree.
So okay, I agree, but let's go with that. How would anybody cultivate more of that feeling of innocence when confronted with a problem?
Well, I think a misunderstanding here. I don't think the innocence helps the problem. I think the knowledge, the big toolbox you have of 30 years of working helps solve the problem. I think innocence really creates something original. Is what I think. There's kind of two different things to me. I've been blessed to work in a situation where with Jim and the guys, where there's very hardly any negativity. It's all support of each other. And again, we're not little Christmas elves. We totally love to fuck each other over, and it's fun. But we're always supportive, always loving, and that's the atmosphere I grew in with Jim. And so naturally, I had more of an opportunity to have that innocence. And whatever innocence I had in me was allowed to grow. If I had worked with somebody who was a screamer, or if I was in the police department working the Vice Squad, I think that innocence would not have grown. So it's not easy for everybody to have. It's trying to find that germ of who you are inside before the world glommed onto you.
And again, how do you think, let's say you weren't in that environment, but you wanted to foster that in yourself now. You're listening to this and you're thinking, boy, I wish I could be a little bit more like that.
It's hard because you're also dealing with the realities. And this is all complex because if somebody's working as in a border crossing for customs and hears this, and he's saying, boy, I really want to do that. And yet he's got 2 kids and a mortgage. How can he do that? He can eventually, somehow, long term, but it's not easy. I've been very fortunate, but people have a lot of trouble these days in this world, struggling. And so, on the one hand, I do believe you can do it, but on the other hand, when you have responsibilities, especially kids, it's much more difficult. But I think still, there are some people who have put away that which they love in order to make money and living. I think maybe trying to go back to that, what they loved. Some people are very fortunate. They love what they do. Those are the lucky ones. But there's many who haven't. And maybe going back to that and see the germ of that would be
like maybe doing it on the side for a little bit or testing it out.
Yeah, I mean, again, I don't have empirical knowledge there because I've been very blessed. This is my only job I've ever had in my life. I've been totally blessed. But I do know that, and we came to this country with no money whatsoever. My father, my mother, my brother, and I, we were immigrants. And my father brought us, we went across in steerage from London and landed in New York. And my father put me and my brother and my mom on the train in Grand Central and to Montana, because that's where our financial responsibility guy was. He for 6 months he said he would be financially responsible for us. That's how he got the visa. And so my father brought us to Grand Central, but he didn't have enough money for himself. So he hitchhiked to Montana from New York. So I come from that. I come from that stock, that kind of peasant stock, and that stock of working hard and really, knowing the complexities of trying to make a living in this world and still expressing yourself. My dad wanted to be an architect, but he had to make money, and he became a window trimmer and a sign painter. So it's hard to know how to do it. I think it's tough as hell. And I think, especially when you're comfortable, it's harder.
Well, I agree with that, because I think then you might lose touch with that struggle. Like this has to be legit to succeed. And maybe when you're comfortable, you cut corners on that thinking.
Yeah, I mean, it's funny. I sit here and I think to myself, these are all rich man's problems for being creative, when most people are just trying to fucking eat.
Yeah, but a lot of creativity comes from that struggle.
Absolutely. It comes from pain. It comes from struggle. I believe struggle is the most important thing. I think without struggle, you don't feel satisfied once you're a success.
And do you think, instead of calling it innocence, let's call it authenticity. Do you think?
Okay, fair enough.
Do you think, like you mentioned earlier, you wouldn't do the voices because the implication was it wouldn't feel authentic to you for those characters.
I'm just showing off.
Right. So that wouldn't be authentic for those characters.
Mm-mm.
So maybe is there a way, like, how do you sense when you're doing a creative project now, that doesn't quite feel authentic to me? Like, is it something in the body? Is it something you can articulate after 35 years of work? Where can you get back to that point where you were learning authenticity?
I don't know, but I not unlike Steve Martin, he does this. He's authentic and pure. He's strong on the outside to protect that. I have to be strong on the outside to protect that innocence or that purity. And I guess I'm not sure if I can answer it. It's more visceral than intellectual. I don't know if I can answer that.
Like you feel it in your body.
Yeah, and I can, the more I'm honest with myself, that's another brick in the wall of honesty. And they keep on going, and then the more bricks you put, the wall gets higher, and you understand and feel the honesty. But if all of a sudden you put one of those bricks and you're dishonest, wait a second, then I've lost my way,
Well, okay, let's take an example. So I feel like in Sesame Street, you created these brilliant characters, and Jim Henson was there, and you're all working together. The Muppets, obviously, the Muppet Show and the Muppet movies and Fraggle Rock. You guys, it just looked like you guys were having a blast. It was like sketch shows with puppets, and it was the rage of the nation. Like it seemed like that was the peak time for you guys enjoying each other. When you had to act the role of Yoda, did that feel a little less authentic to you?
No.
Authentic, because you were acting instead of the more improv-like aspects.
No, by no means. And I'll go to Yoda in a second, but to make something clear regarding improv and having fun, we can only do that when we're deadly serious and know our stuff. When we say improv, we mean with discipline, with rigor, knowing what the character wants.
Right, each character had boundaries.
And the techniques, and we have to have all those techniques and all the physical aspects and all the intents of the scripts and all the cues and all the move, everything. They have to have that in such a way that you don't think about it. It's instinct. then you can improv. Then you earn the right to improv.
That's like Kurt Vonnegut's quote, like, don't do experimental fiction before you know the laws of grammar.
Sure. Like my father used to say, draw a straight line and a circle before you can start painting. Yeah. And I think in what we do, in the performance of the Muppets when I did it, it was, people don't understand, it took me about 10 years to learn how to do Muppets. Other people took about 5-7 years or so. It's not immediate. It takes a long, long time to get it in your head. Not in your head, but in your gut, where you don't even think about it. Because we're always looking at monitors. The monitors are reversed, so if you move left, it looks like we're moving right. All those, that takes a long time. It takes a long time for a lot of stuff. So, but we have a great time. The harder we work, the more fun we have, and it's great. But Yoda was a great opportunity because I had an opportunity to express another part of myself. Where performing, one's main job is to connect with the audience and to elicit some sort of reaction, usually laughter. With an actor, you don't think about the audience at all. At all. You're not trying to get anything from the audience. You don't care. What you're doing is you're doing what honest impulse to honest impulse says in the script. So that's what I did with Yoda. And it was wonderful because I have an opportunity to express that part of myself that has tremendous gravitas and internal power that all of us have. So that was a rare opportunity. So it's wonderful. Yeah.
And I read somewhere that Yoda's known for his very distinctive speech pattern, the way he reverses sentences. And I read somewhere that you came up with that.
No.
Is that true?
No, I did not. Larry and George wrote that, but they didn't write it all the time. They were in and out of it. And so I asked George, I thought it was really valuable. And I asked George, can I just do it all the time? He said, sure. So I didn't do it. I didn't think of it though.
But you asking him to do it all the time and him saying, sure, reminds me of the kind of interaction you might have had with Jim Henson, like proposing ideas and him saying, okay, let's try that.
Yeah, George and Jim were very similar, very quiet, very smart, very strong people. I like people who don't say much. People who say a lot and use their power are bogus to me. People who are quiet and just do the damn job and listen to people. I have a lot of respect for those people. And that was George. That was Jim. That's Ryan, as the director of Jedi. Ryan is like that too.
How did you and your wife meet? You guys seem to work closely together.
Yeah, we met. It was a setup. We went to a dinner party, and we were too stupid to realize it was a setup. And then but I'm 20 years older than her, so there was never a thought in my mind or her mind we'd get together. We're just friends. There's no way. I mean, why would she want somebody 20 years older, for God's sake? And then it kind of just happened. The mind doesn't control that. The heart does.
How long have you been married?
Only about 8 years. I was married previously for about 23 years. I have four great kids, adult children. But I got very, very lucky. And my first wife was a wonderful person, loves Victoria, and vice versa, so it works out great. But she's an amazing person. She's, as I said, she'd be right here, except that she's right now doing a seminar for 4 days with people coming off around the world to learn from her.
What do you think the secret is with the 20-year age difference? Like, what is there any secret?
Well, okay, do I say this on the Muppet? I think I either say it in the Muppet Guys Talking or I say it in extra footage that we have to people.
You didn't say it in the Muppet Guys Talking, I can tell you that.
Okay, well, we had this, I believe this. We had Roy Rogers and Dale Evans on the show. It was one of the many, many guests. And we were in the office, and Dale and Roy were there, and I said, Dale, you guys have been married for so long. What's the secret? And Dale said, well, we both believe in God, and we're both religious, and we believe that's a very important part of our lives, and that binds us together. It's kind of paraphrasing. And then I asked Roy, I said, Roy, what do you think? And he gave the best answer to me of any way to be married. He said, give 90, take 10.
Huh. I like that.
And I think the more you give, the more you get.
But then if you're giving 90 and taking 10, is the other side not giving enough?
Oh, no. We both do that. because then it would be a bastardization of that. And then if one's only giving and the other person's taking, that's not a relationship.
Right. That's what I was wondering.
Yeah. No, it's also, you get a fork in the road, you get upset, you get a fork in the road, and the idea is one way is anger and the other way is acceptance. And you can choose. Sometimes, unfortunately, I choose anger without knowing it because I'm flawed like everybody else. But mostly I try and choose acceptance of it.
So, while I was watching Muppet Guys Talking, Steve, who's sitting over there, my podcast producer, was also watching it. And we both noticed something at the exact same time because we exchanged emails at the exact same moment over the exact same scene that struck us, which is when Fran Brill asked to take a coffee break. And we see this whole behind the scenes of the show about the Muppets. So I thought that was interesting that you kept that. I mean, we see the cameraman, everyone's taking a coffee. It's like a nice break in the middle of this documentary.
Well, whenever I shoot a movie, like I shot Little Shop of Horrors. When I shot Little Shop of Horrors, that
great movie.
Thank you. That demanded the form to be different. The material tells one how to about the form of the shooting, and so that happens in Little Shop. That happens in other movies, and it happened here because the Muppets are rambunctious. They're flawed. There's tremendous energy, and if I shot that with just sticks, tripod, or if I shot that beautifully and I had beautiful lighting and I had a tracking shot, that would not reflect the spirit of the Muppets. So I felt that spirit of the Muppets was reflected only in dirty shooting, which to me is showing the camera operators, showing people having drinks, walking in and out of frame, and that meant also just keep rolling while you're having coffee, and that's who we are. There's nothing phony. It's just, and so that because the form, the content to me dictates the form, and that's the only form I felt it could take.
Content dictates the form.
Mm-hmm. To me, it does.
So I'm just trying to unpack that for a second.
Well, for instance, I remember Downton Abbey. There was a shot that annoyed the hell out of me as a director. Downton Abbey, which I loved, but there was a shot that they were going outside and getting into a car with a chauffeur, and nobody else got it, but I'm so annoyed. But they had a Steadicam, which people often overuse these days, but a Steadicam. And so the Steadicam came, and it just glided past the people and then around the car and glided back on the other side of the car. Now, that does not reflect the content. They didn't have Steadicams in the 1900s. It just pulled me out of the shot completely.
Really, that's interesting.
That's me.
In the sense that, so I watched Downton Abbey. I'm trying to picture the scene, but I can't. But I would just think, okay, they're just showing us the full view of these people getting into a car.
Yeah, and my reaction, maybe because I've directed so many movies, my reaction is it wasn't true to the spirit of Downton Abbey. Having that one shot. By the way, I'm not criticizing. I binge watched Downton Abbey. It's wonderful, but that one shot didn't reflect to me the spirit of that place. The spirit of that place was much more formal and much more straight. Where it called for shots that were not beautiful and elegant. It called for shots that reflected that particular society at that particular time, and that bothered me, But that's an example that maybe I'm just sensitive to only.
No, that's very interesting. I mean, I feel that way about podcasting, actually, that it's not TV, it's not radio, that when mistakes happen, keep them in. It's important this is like the Wild West of...
People love mistakes.
Yeah, people love mistakes.
Yeah.
I mean, you look at stand-up comedy, for instance, sometimes the funniest things are the riffs that were not planned at all. So
absolutely. When I'm a director, I'm directing all these movies. I mean, I've had the joy of working with, Eddie Murphy and Steve Martin and Bill Murray and Bob De Niro and everybody. I pray for accidents. I pray for things to go wrong because it's all of a sudden you're alive.
Yeah,
it's
that's
alive,
interesting.
you know?
So you've directed so many people, so many fascinating and great actors, comic actors, straight actors, and if you separate that out from comic. And as the director, you're the leader of the pack when you're in a scene.
Right.
What's been kind of the most intense scene or that you've had to really use all of your skills and experience to really pull this together?
Boy, it's hard because every movie has its own. There's the comedic aspect of it, and there's the dramatic aspect of it. I don't want to run away from the question, but I can't really pinpoint one. Most scenes are just hard anyway to make them come alive. Because if it's not right, I'll just say, okay, guys, let's stop. It's not working. Come on, let's go ahead. Let's go talk about it. Let's have a table read. Everybody take a break. If it's not working, I just won't shoot it. That's when it's really that bad, then I stop. As a matter of fact, I if something's written and it doesn't work, I did this with Bob De Niro and I forgot her. She's a wonderful back actress. I'm so embarrassed I forgot her name. She's wonderful. She played Tina Turner in the movie. Come on, help me out. She's brilliant.
Angela Bassett.
Oh yeah, Angela. Angela's so wonderful. But we all realized what's on paper, thought was great. It didn't work. So I said, okay, guys, to the first AD, you guys go away for about an hour or two, okay? We're going to play around here. And so we improvised the thing, and we rewrote it that way, okay? It's just, to me, what's more important is the life on the floor, not the words on the page, I'm not sure how I got there. I forgot totally. I went off on a tangent, didn't I?
No. That answers it. And do you feel you got that experience from studying Jim Henson in action?
No, I don't. It's not intellectual anyway. I didn't study. I just. I think from all the years I've worked with Jim and all the movies I've done, I look for that truthful moment, and if it's not truthful, I just stop. I just don't shoot it.
And it's that visceral feeling.
Yeah. It's you keep putting that brick in that wall. The higher the wall goes, the stronger you have a sense of who you are.
Well, Frank Oz, again, I can't believe I'm sitting across from you. Out of the 400 or so or however many guests I've had for this podcast, again, I'm dumbstruck how
so
much
nice.
I have heard your voice and how much it has meant to me over the decades. In so many ways. And I didn't even realize, I didn't even connect all the dots until I was preparing for this
Thank you.
podcast. So it's amazing. And again, to your credit, that's how real these characters were for me. Like Yoda and Bert and Miss Piggy, these are real important people to me.
Well, that's why I wanted to do this documentary with Victoria also, is because besides the fact that we wanted to show people, how we could really work in a work atmosphere and be creative and have a great time, also because I want to show these guys who are so professional and work so hard, and they're the ones that make everything look easy. They're the ones who create Pepe, or they're the ones who Prairie Dawn, or they do Grover, or Bunsen Honeydew, or they do, all these, Floyd. And those characters, that was the fun of making the documentary. Those characters are created by people in such a way that I didn't even know. I learned something from Dave Goelz, from other people in that movie that I never knew about, because we've all been interviewed individually for years, but never once were we all together ever talking about it.
And what I really also like the idea of taking out the middleman, not going through the whole kind of studio system and finding a place to sell the movie to and blah, 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 which is so much pain in that process.
It's also another reason, besides being personal, we want to personally go to our site, is because it continues the spirit of the Muppets. If we were these rambunctious Muppets and I shot it rambunctiously and then went to a big fucking company, the spirit wouldn't feel right. So we continued that spirit and became and decided to become scrappy instead. which I love that rebellious quality, and that carries it all the way through. That's why we have MuppetGuysTalking.com, so people can be direct to us as opposed to through another company. And by the way, I love Netflix and everything, but in this instance, I just felt, and Victoria felt, it was much truer, more true. We built our own little brick wall. We wanted to stay with it.
So Muppet Guys Talking, great. It was brilliant for me to watch and see, how you guys fostered such creativity over decades and so many different stories and characters and everything you've done and created with that. Muppet Guys Talking, get it at MuppetGuysTalking.com. I highly recommend it. And it is, again, Frank Oz, such a pleasure to have you at the podcast.
Thank you so much, Red. That was fun.
Thank you.
That was good. That was good questions and everything.
Oh, good.
One thing I always say is that I'm sitting here and I got the spotlight on me, but the truth is I represent Jim and other people who's passed away, Jerry Jewell and Don Saline and Richard Hunt and all the other performers and the workshop people who make the characters. They should be sitting around with me right here. But I'm the guy who gets the credit, and so I just happen to be in the spotlight. But it takes a lot of people. One does not create in a vacuum,
Well, you get that sense in the movie. In Muppet Guys Talking, you get that sense very much from all the other characters. Everybody had their say, and it's amazing how much input, you realize how much input the whole team had on this massive creative process.
Yeah, and that all came from Jim. All from Jim, a unique individual.
AI might be the most important new computer technology ever. It's storming every industry and literally billions of dollars are being invested. So buckle up. The problem is that AI needs a lot of speed and processing power, so how do you compete without costs spiraling out of control? It's time to upgrade to the next generation of the cloud, Oracle Cloud Infrastructure, or OCI. OCI is a single platform for your infrastructure, database, application development, and AI needs. OCI has 4 to 8 times the bandwidth of other clouds, offers one consistent price instead of variable regional pricing, and of course, nobody does data better than Oracle. So now you can train your AI models at twice the speed and less than half the cost of other clouds. If you want to do more and spend less, like Uber, 8x8, and Databricks Mosaic, take a free test drive of OCI at oracle.com/advance. That's oracle.com/advance. oracle.com/advance.